You're not choosing your partners the way you think you are. Something unseen is choosing through you, and once you see it, your love life can't go back to what it was. You've been told attraction is chemistry, timing, or luck, but that's a comfortable lie. What really pulls you into the same emotional patterns, the same conflicts, the same types of people, lives beneath awareness, quietly shaping your desires and reactions. Modern relationships feel confusing, not because love is broken, but because most people are unconscious of the forces driving it. And that confusion comes at a cost. Repeated heartbreak, silent resentment, and the feeling that something is always missing, even when you're not alone. Here's the counterintuitive truth. The problem in your relationships isn't the other person. It's the unseen dynamics inside you. Once you understand how the unconscious feminine and masculine energies operate within your psyche, everything starts to make sense. Attraction, conflict, projection, even why love fades or deepens. This isn't abstract psychology. It's a practical map for transforming how you love, connect, and grow. And today, that map becomes visible. You don't fall in love by accident, even when it feels that way. One moment you're living your routine, minding your business, and suddenly, bam, you're pulled towards someone with a force that feels magnetic, irrational, almost inevitable. That pull, that attraction, isn't just chemistry or timing. It's the unconscious reaching up through you, steering your attention like a hidden current beneath calm water. You think you're choosing freely, but something older, deeper, and far wiser than logic is already at work. And if you've ever wondered why certain people light you up instantly while others barely register, this is where the story really begins. Here's the part most people miss. Attraction isn't about the other person, as much as it's about what they activate inside you. Your psyche is always searching for balance, for integration, for wholeness. When you encounter someone who carries qualities your inner world lacks or represses, tenderness, confidence, decisiveness, emotional depth, your anima or animus leans forward and whispers, "There, that's important." It feels romantic, electric, even spiritual. But what's happening is a projection. You're seeing your own unlived potential reflected in another human being, like spotting your reflection in a mirror you didn't know existed. Think of it like this. Your inner world is a house with locked rooms. Attraction happens when someone walks by carrying the key to one of those rooms. You're not falling for the person. You're falling for the door they unlock. That's why attraction can feel intoxicating and overwhelming. It's not just desire, it's recognition. And this is also why relationships can feel fated at first, as if something deep inside you is saying, "Pay attention, this matters." The unconscious doesn't speak in words. It speaks in feelings, impulses, and sudden certainty. You can see this pattern clearly if you look back honestly. Maybe you're always drawn to emotionally unavailable partners, or to strong, mysterious types, or to people who seem grounded in ways you don't feel. That's not bad luck. That's your psyche pointing toward the shadow, the parts of you that were ignored, discouraged, or never developed. Attraction becomes the messenger. Instead of asking, "Why do I want them so badly?" a wiser question is, "What quality in them feels essential to me right now?" That single shift in self-awareness can change everything. Now here's the subtle hook most people never notice. Attraction is an invitation, not a destination. It's meant to wake you up, not to complete you. When you confuse the signal for the solution, you suffer. But when you read the signal correctly, attraction becomes a guide toward individuation, toward becoming more whole, more conscious, more you. And once you see how this invisible hand operates, you start to notice something else stirring beneath the surface. Because attraction doesn't just pull you together, it also sets the stage for conflict, tension, and revelation in ways you might not expect. At first, it feels magical, almost sacred. You look at them and think, "This is it. This is what I've been waiting for." Their voice soothes you, their presence steadies you, their flaws even seem charming. But here's the quiet truth most people never hear. What you're calling love in the beginning is often projection wearing a beautiful disguise. You're not seeing the person fully yet. You're seeing your anima or animus painted onto them, like light projected onto a screen. And that illusion can feel more powerful than reality itself. Your mind does this for a reason. The unconscious doesn't want romance, it wants balance. It borrows another human being to show you what's missing inside. So you idealize, you exaggerate their wisdom, their strength, their emotional depth. You fill in the blanks with your own unmet longings. That's why early love feels euphoric and effortless. It's fueled by inner energy, not shared truth. And there's nothing wrong with this stage. It's natural, it's human. But problems begin when you mistake the projection for the person. Picture a movie theater. The screen looks alive. Heroes, drama, beauty, intensity. But the power isn't in the screen. It's in the projector behind you. When the film ends, the screen goes blank. In relationships, the same thing happens. Over time, reality pushes back. They disappoint you. They don't live up to the image. And suddenly you think they've changed. Most of the time they haven't. The projection has simply faded, and now you're face to face with a real human being instead of a psychological image. This is where many relationships break or mature. When projection collapses, the shadow steps in. You may feel anger, betrayal, or boredom. You might accuse them of not being who you thought they were. But the deeper work asks a harder question. What part of me did I give to them instead of living it myself? Maybe you admired their confidence because you never learned to trust your own voice. Maybe their emotional depth moved you because you were taught to suppress your feelings. This is the moment where self-awareness either grows or retreats. If you want something practical here, try this. When you feel intensely drawn or disappointed, write down 3 qualities you admire or resent in your partner. Then ask yourself, honestly, where does this live in me? Not where it should live, where it actually does. This simple act turns projection into insight and attraction into integration. And once you start reclaiming those qualities, love slowly shifts from fantasy to presence. That shift, however, opens the door to something even more unsettling. Because when projection ends, conflict begins to speak. If you're honest with yourself, you've probably noticed the pattern. Different names, different faces, maybe even different cities. But somehow the ending feels familiar. The same emotional highs, the same disappointments, the same turning point where things quietly fall apart. This isn't coincidence. And it's definitely not bad luck. It's the unconscious replaying a script it desperately wants you to understand. Until awareness steps in, the psyche repeats. Again, and again, and again. Think of it like a scratched vinyl record. The music is beautiful, but the needle keeps jumping back to the same line. In relationships, that line might sound like, I always give more than I receive, or they pull away when I get close, or I end up feeling invisible. These recurring stories are shaped by your anima or animus, formed early, reinforced quietly, and carried forward into adult attraction. The mind doesn't choose what's healthy, it chooses what's familiar. Familiarity feels safe, even when it hurts. Here's where it gets uncomfortable, but powerful. The person you're drawn to often fits perfectly into your unfinished inner story. They activate your projection, awaken your shadow, and confirm beliefs you didn't know you were living by. For example, if deep down you believe love must be earned, you'll unconsciously choose partners who withhold affection, not to punish you, but to reveal the belief. The psyche uses repetition as a teacher, not an enemy. Every similar relationship is a message written in a different handwriting. You can interrupt this cycle, but not by force, not by swearing off love or blaming the world. You do it by becoming curious instead of critical. Next time you feel drawn to someone, pause and ask, how does this feel familiar? Not exciting, familiar. What emotional role do you slip into around them? The caretaker, the pursuer, the one who waits? This kind of self-awareness turns attraction into information and patterns into maps. You're no longer trapped inside the story, you're reading it. And here's the subtle shift that changes everything. Once you recognize the pattern, you start choosing differently without trying. Your nervous system learns new safety, your integration deepens. The old dynamics lose their grip because they've delivered their lesson. But something else happens too. Once repetition loosens, tension rises in new ways. Conflict no longer comes from repetition alone, it comes from collision. Because when patterns break, deeper forces step forward, and that's where the real friction begins. You think you're arguing about tone, timing, or something small like dishes left in the sink. But if you slow down and really listen, you'll feel it. That tightness in the chest, that sudden surge of emotion that's way bigger than the moment deserves. That's your first clue. Most conflict in relationships isn't born in the present. It's activated from somewhere deeper. The argument is just the spark. The real fire lives in the unconscious, where your anima and animus collide without words. Here's why conflict feels so personal. When someone challenges you, dismisses you, or withdraws, they don't just frustrate you, they threaten an inner balance you haven't fully stabilized yet. Maybe their silence awakens an old fear of abandonment. Maybe their criticism hits a wound tied to your sense of worth. In those moments, you're not reacting to them as they are. You're reacting to what they symbolize inside your psyche. That's projection under pressure, and it's why small disagreements explode into emotional storms. Imagine two people carrying invisible backpacks filled with unresolved feelings, expectations, and old emotional debts. Conflict happens when those backpacks collide. You're not just arguing with your partner, you're arguing with their shadow while defending your own. This is why logic rarely solves relationship fights. You can win the argument and still feel empty, because the real issue isn't being addressed. What wants attention is the part of you that feels unseen, unheard, or unsafe. There's a powerful shift you can practice here. In the middle of conflict, instead of asking, how do I prove my point? Ask, what part of me feels threatened right now? Name it silently. Is it your need for respect, for closeness, for autonomy? This pause creates space for self-awareness, and space changes everything. Even a single conscious breath can interrupt a lifelong pattern. Conflict stops being a battlefield and becomes a signal. And when conflict stops being about winning, something unexpected happens. You start to see how often you're fighting the same emotional enemy in different disguises. The tone changes, the stakes deepen. Because beneath the argument, there's another force waiting to be recognized, one that doesn't just provoke you, but reflects you. That's when the shadow steps fully into view, asking not to be defeated but understood. There's a moment, quiet, sharp, unavoidable, when you realize what irritates you most in them won't let you go. It follows you. It echoes in your thoughts long after the conversation ends. That's not random annoyance. That's the shadow knocking. What you resist, criticize, or feel emotionally charged by in your partner often points straight back to something unclaimed within you. The psyche has a strange sense of humor like that. It hides your blind spots in the people closest to you. You see, the shadow isn't evil or broken. It's simply what you learn to push aside to survive, to be accepted, to belong. Maybe you were taught not to be needy, so neediness in others enrages you. Maybe you were praised for being strong, so vulnerability in someone else makes you uncomfortable. In relationships, these disowned traits don't disappear. They reappear as emotional triggers, and the closer the bond, the clearer the reflection. Think of your partner as a living mirror that doesn't flatter you. They reflect not only your light, but also the parts you'd rather keep backstage. This is where projection becomes painfully obvious. You accuse them of being selfish, weak, cold, dramatic, yet the intensity of your reaction reveals something deeper. The question isn't, are they like this? It's, why does this hit me so hard? That emotional charge is the doorway to self-awareness. Here's something practical you can try without turning this into therapy jargon. The next time you feel strongly triggered, pause and complete this sentence in your mind. I can't stand it when you... Then ask yourself gently but honestly, where does this exist in me, even in a small or hidden way? You might not like the answer at first. That's okay. Growth rarely feels flattering, but this simple reflection begins the process of integration, where the shadow stops controlling you from the dark. And here's the paradox most people never hear. The traits you judge most harshly are often the ones holding your untapped power. Your anger may hide your assertiveness. Your jealousy may hide your desire. Your contempt may hide a longing for freedom. When you reclaim these energies consciously, your relationships shift. The fights soften. The resentment loosens. But just as this awareness starts to settle in, another realization begins to emerge, because once the shadow is seen, the question becomes not what you reject, but what you were taught to suppress in the first place. From a very early age, you were trained, quietly, persistently, to become only half of yourself. Certain traits were praised, encouraged, rewarded. Others were softened, silenced, or dismissed. Over time, you learned who you were allowed to be. Strength over sensitivity, logic over intuition, control over receptivity. This isn't personal failure, it's conditioning. And yet, the parts you were taught to ignore didn't disappear. They became your anima or animus, waiting patiently in the unconscious, shaping your desires from behind the scenes. You can feel this inner split in everyday life. Maybe you're highly competent but emotionally distant, or deeply caring but afraid to assert yourself. These imbalances don't just affect your inner world, they show up vividly in relationships. You're drawn to people who carry what you disowned. Their emotional depth fascinates you. Their decisiveness intimidates you. Their freedom both attracts and threatens you. This is projection again, but at a deeper level, the psyche reaching outward to compensate for what's missing inwardly. Think of your inner world like a bird trying to fly with one wing. You can move, sure, but you'll keep circling the same emotional territory. True movement requires both wings working together. Integration begins when you stop seeing your inner opposite as a weakness and start recognizing it as untapped strength. Sensitivity doesn't cancel strength, it refines it. Assertiveness doesn't erase kindness, it protects it. Wholeness isn't about becoming someone else. It's about reclaiming what was always yours. Here's where you can make this real. Choose one quality you deeply admire in others, but struggle to embody. Maybe it's emotional openness, creative expression, or calm authority. This week, practice it in small, low-risk ways. Speak one honest feeling instead of suppressing it. Set one clear boundary without over-explaining. Write, draw, or reflect for 10 minutes without judging the result. These small acts tell the unconscious that it's safe to bring the inner opposite forward, and safety is what allows growth. As you do this, something subtle shifts. Your attraction patterns begin to soften. The emotional intensity changes flavor. You're no longer chasing completion through others as desperately. Self-awareness starts to replace hunger with curiosity. But this newfound balance creates a new tension too, because once you stop unconsciously leaning on others to carry parts of you, love itself has to change form. And that's when the meaning of connection begins to transform. At the beginning, love wants to hold tight. It wants certainty, reassurance, proof. It says, stay, choose me, don't change. This isn't wrong, it's human, but it's also unconscious. When your inner balance is fragile, love becomes a way to stabilize yourself through another person. You don't just want them, you need them to remain who they were when they first activated your anima or animus. And that's where love quietly turns into possession, even when it wears a gentle face. You can feel this shift when fear sneaks in. Fear of losing them, fear of being replaced, fear of not being enough. These fears don't mean you're broken. They signal that projection is still at work. You're asking the relationship to protect you from your own unfinished shadow. So you monitor tone, read between lines, overinterpret silences. Love becomes tense, watchful. And ironically, the more you try to secure it, the more fragile it becomes. Possession suffocates what attraction once ignited. Conscious love begins at a different starting point. It doesn't say, complete me. It says, walk with me while I become whole. This kind of love emerges when integration deepens and self-awareness grows. You stop demanding that your partner carry your unlived potential. Instead, you take responsibility for it. You express what you feel without blaming. You set boundaries without punishment. You allow the other to change without panicking. Freedom becomes part of intimacy, not a threat to it. Here's a grounded practice that shifts everything. When you feel the urge to control, ask yourself, what am I afraid would happen if I let this be? Then ask a second question, just as important. How can I give myself what I'm trying to extract from them? If you need reassurance, speak kindly to yourself before demanding it. If you crave closeness, offer presence instead of pressure. These small inner adjustments dismantle unconscious dependency and make room for real connection in relationships. As possession loosens, love doesn't weaken, it clarifies. You begin to see your partner as they are, not as a role in your psychological drama. The bond feels quieter, but stronger, less intoxicating, more real. And yet, as this conscious love stabilizes, a new challenge appears, because once love stops being fueled by illusion, it has to survive in the real world. And that's where modern life, masks, and identity begin to complicate the story. You live in an age where identity is edited, filtered, and curated in real time. Online, everyone seems confident, awakened, desirable, certain. But beneath the polished surface, the same ancient forces are at work. The Anima and Animus didn't disappear with technology, they adapted. Social media simply gave them a louder stage. What you're often responding to online isn't the person, it's the archetype they're performing. And your unconscious responds instantly before reason has a chance to intervene. You can feel it when a post, a photo, or even a sentence hits you harder than it should. Admiration, envy, longing, irritation, it flares up fast. That's projection moving at digital speed. Someone embodies confidence you wish you had. Another displays vulnerability you're afraid to show. The platform becomes a marketplace of shadows and ideals, where attraction and comparison blur together. And without self-awareness, it's easy to confuse performance with essence, image with truth. Think of social media like a modern masquerade ball. Everyone wears a mask, some consciously, others not. The danger isn't the mask itself, it's forgetting it's a mask. In relationships, this shows up when intimacy struggles to compete with constant stimulation and endless options. Why stay and work through discomfort when there's always another image promising ease and excitement? The psyche gets overstimulated but undernourished. Depth is replaced by novelty, and connection becomes thin. Here's something practical that cuts through the noise. The next time you feel emotionally hooked by someone online, pause and ask, what quality is being displayed here that I'm craving? Confidence, freedom, sensuality, emotional openness? Then choose one small offline action that embodies that quality in your own life. Speak more honestly in one conversation. Move your body with intention. create something without posting it. This redirects energy from comparison toward integration, where it actually belongs. As you become more conscious of these modern masks, your perception sharpens. You start valuing presence over performance, depth over display. Your relationships become quieter, but richer, less reactive, more intentional. And once the external noise fades just enough, another truth begins to surface. Because beyond attraction, conflict, and identity, love itself is asking a deeper question. How do two whole individuals grow together over time? And that question leads directly into the long game of connection. Most people enter love hoping to be completed. Quietly, unconsciously, they expect the relationship to fill gaps, soothe old wounds, and finally make life feel stable. But love was never meant to finish you. It was meant to reveal you. In its deepest form, love is a path of individuation, a process where two people walk side by side while becoming more fully themselves. That's why real relationships don't just comfort you. They challenge you. They press on the places where your identity is still forming. When you understand this, frustration begins to look different. The moments when your partner triggers you, disagrees with you, or doesn't meet your expectations aren't failures. They're invitations. Invitations to strengthen self-awareness, to refine boundaries, to take responsibility for your emotional world instead of outsourcing it. The unconscious uses intimacy as a training ground. Love brings your patterns to the surface, not to punish you, but to mature you. Think of individuation like forging a blade. Heat alone isn't enough, neither is pressure. You need both. Comfort without challenge keeps you soft. Challenge without care breaks you. Healthy relationships offer a rhythm between the two. Support when you're overwhelmed. Resistance when you're avoiding growth. Over time, this rhythm shapes character. You become more grounded, less reactive, more capable of holding complexity without collapsing into old defenses. Here's how this shows up in real life. Instead of saying, "You make me feel insecure," you begin to say, "This situation reveals an insecurity I need to understand." Instead of demanding change, you invite dialogue. Instead of losing yourself to keep the peace, you stay present and honest. These aren't grand gestures. They're small, repeated choices that align love with integration rather than dependency. And slowly, love stops feeling like a test you're failing and starts feeling like a craft you're learning. As individuation deepens, something subtle but profound happens. You stop clinging to outcomes. You stop needing the relationship to justify your worth. Paradoxically, this makes love more resilient, not less. Because now, connection isn't built on fear. It's built on presence. And once presence becomes the foundation, a final realization waits just ahead. One that redefines intimacy itself, not as excitement or harmony, but as wholeness shared over time. Most people think intimacy is about closeness, shared secrets, physical presence, constant connection. But real intimacy begins somewhere quieter and far more demanding, inside you. It starts when you no longer need another person to carry what you refuse to face in yourself. Wholeness is the real intimacy, because only when you're internally integrated can you truly meet someone else without masks, strategies, or silent negotiations. Anything less is proximity, not connection. When your anima and animus are partially integrated, love stops being a hunger and becomes a sharing. You're no longer scanning your partner for reassurance or validation. You listen differently. You speak more cleanly. Silence doesn't scare you as much, and distance doesn't automatically feel like rejection. This is what integration looks like in daily life. Not perfection, but inner stability. You're grounded enough to stay open without losing yourself. Think of two people sitting by a fire. If one is freezing, they'll crowd the flame, desperate for warmth. If both are warm enough on their own, they can sit side by side, relaxed, present, enjoying the same fire without panic. That's how relationships change when wholeness replaces dependency. You're no longer using love to regulate your nervous system. You're using love to share experience, meaning, and growth. There's a simple but powerful practice here. Ask yourself regularly, am I bringing my whole self into this moment, or am I asking the other person to fill a gap? When you notice yourself grasping, pause, breathe. Name what you need internally before reaching outward. This small act strengthens self-awareness and weakens unconscious projection. Over time, your emotional reactions soften and your presence deepens. And here's the quiet truth that ties everything together. When you become whole, love doesn't become boring. It becomes less dramatic, more profound, less intoxicating, more nourishing. You're no longer chasing reflections of yourself in others. You're meeting them as they are. And once you experience that level of intimacy, something irreversible happens. Because now, the question isn't how to find love, but how to live in a way that sustains it. Now the responsibility is gently back in your hands. You've seen how attraction is shaped by the unconscious, how projection disguises itself as love, how conflict reveals the shadow, and how true intimacy is born from integration, not dependency. The real question is no longer, why does this keep happening to me? But what am I willing to see, reclaim, and live consciously from now on? Because awareness, once gained, quietly demands action. So take this knowledge out of theory and into life. Watch your attractions instead of blindly following them. Listen to your emotional triggers as messages, not enemies. Practice self-awareness when tension arises, and ask yourself what part of you is being invited to mature. Love stops feeling chaotic when you stop asking it to complete you and start allowing it to refine you. This is how relationships become spaces of growth instead of repetition. Let me ask you something, honestly. What pattern in your love life just made sense for the first time today? What quality have you been chasing in others that you're now ready to develop within yourself? And if you lived the next year guided by consciousness instead of impulse, how different would your connections look, feel, and last? Sit with that, don't rush past it. If this message resonated, it's because something in you is already changing. And if you want to keep exploring the deeper layers of the psyche, love, meaning, and inner transformation, subscribe to Mind's Silent Echo and turn on notifications. This journey doesn't end here. It deepens. And the more conscious you become, the more your life begins to echo with clarity instead of confusion.